to hype a little bit. If you are just joining us, please go and check out our website, polareducator.org, to learn a little bit more about us. And we're glad you joined us and that you're participating in one of our events. And Liz, I have given you the co-host abilities so that when you're ready, we're going to do the quick intro and then you can share your screen, and you're welcome to drop questions in the chat or out loud, either one. But we're just going to give it another minute before we tick over to your hour.
By the way, I didn't plan my background to fit perfectly with the last talk, but it just so happened to be that way.
I was going to say, it's an excellent segue. Just go with it. That's perfect. All right. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Joanna Hubbard. I am the current treasurer and member of the executive committee with the Polar Educators International. I live in Anchorage, Alaska, so I'm coming to you from close to the Arctic, not quite there, although we have had some good aurora in the last few days. It bodes well to be a good season, although it's a very early fall because there is already snow in the mountains and ice in the gardens, and at sea level, that's not nice this time of year. The 24-hour fall Equinox Share-a-thon is one of the projects we are working on this year as we lead up to our halal board, our full table of professional development opportunities leading to our April 2022 conference coming up in Iceland, hopefully in person. We wanted to share a little bit about Polar Educators International and our goals as an organization overall. So we have a short trailer to share with you, but generally let me say I'm so glad that you're here and watching, whether it's recorded, streamed, or here in Zoom.
Polar Educators International is connecting educators, polar researchers, and communities for a better understanding of polar knowledge. Earth's polar regions are remote, beautiful, and challenging places, and they have a profound influence on every one of us. We know these vast amounts of snow, forming ice sheets, sea ice, and glaciers, together with massive currents of cold water, contribute dramatically to the climate and ecosystems of our world, systems which in turn drive the health of our local environments and communities. Research shows dramatic change in the Antarctic, in our mountainous regions, and particularly in the Arctic, home to over 4 million people, which is changing faster than anywhere else on Earth. Scientists are confirming that human activity is playing a significant role in these systems, increasing the planet's surface temperature in ways that cannot be balanced out by natural processes. It is clear the urgency to engage the next generation in polar research and to rise to the challenges that a changing climate will bring has never been greater. United in our passion for sharing the importance and value of the polar regions, educators and researchers from around the world have formed PEI, an essential global network developing polar knowledge to engage a global audience facing climate change. We are collaborating to strengthen this community, building resources and relationships, and helping local audiences connect polar research to their everyday lives. Polar Educators International amplifies the voices of all those dedicated to understanding and protecting our extraordinary polar regions, and all Earth's inhabitants, for generations to come. Join us.
All right. This never wants to let go. And as I said, this is part of a suite of activities that we've been doing since summer, leading us towards our Iceland conference in April 2022. One of the, and the online Hlalborg, if I'm getting it even close to correctly pronounced, we do have one of the earlier events with some of our organizers in Iceland giving us a really good both introduction to Iceland in general, but also to Icelandic language and pronunciation. So if you want to dig back on our YouTube channel, that's definitely one I would suggest. We are using our Slack channel in an ongoing, both during the 24-hour Share-a-thon as well as after, to keep the conversation going. If you have not yet joined, you can go to bit.ly/PEI-Slack, or I am going to go ahead and drop the invite link straight into the chat so you can get it there as well. But we encourage you to use that in whatever way is helpful to connect with the people who've been involved all 24 hours. So thank you much. And I'm going to pass it over to Pia, who is our organizer for this hour.
Thank you, Joanna. It's a great pleasure that I introduce Liz Cooper, who's joining us from Copenhagen. And she is an industrial specialist.
Sorry.
Can you please get the slides through?
Yes.
Thank you. We have a slide for you. Doing a PhD, an industrial fellow at Copenhagen Business School, together with Visit Greenland. And she's a real new entry here because Liz was talking at the Orkney Science Festival just a couple of weeks ago, and I thought her lecture was so interesting that I immediately contacted her, and I'm very grateful that Liz accepted to talk to us about the same subject, which is how green Greenland is. Because we always think of Greenland as the ice cap and the island of ice, but Liz will show that it wasn't just in Viking times that Greenland was green, and that's why it got its name, but even now. So it's for me, it's been a real discovery, and I've found it very, very interesting. And you can, get you the floor, Greenland of Norse and Inuit. Thank you, Liz.
Thanks, Pia. And hi, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending where you are. I'm just going to share my screen here. Okay. Yeah, it's 9 a.m. in Copenhagen, so it's a very convenient hour for me, but I hear that some of you are on hour 19 of this Share-a-thon, so thanks for still being here. Yeah, my name's Liz Cooper. I'm going to talk about Greenland, specifically about two of Greenland's UNESCO World Heritage Sites. I think I will talk for around 30 minutes. And there will be some videos, hopefully, if they work. So it won't just be you listening to my voice for 30 minutes. And then there'll be some time for questions afterwards. Okay, so briefly, a bit about me to start with. As Pia said, I'm an industrial PhD fellow based at Copenhagen Business School. My PhD project is sponsored by Visit Greenland. And my PhD research is about sustainable tourist behavior in Greenland. I'm also a part-time research assistant on this development project called SciTour, or Wonder Seekers, which is kind of the reason that I was asked to do the talk at Orkney, which is why I was asked to do the talk here. And the project is a development project funded by the Northern Periphery and Arctic Programme, which is an EU fund. It's kind of relevant to the Polar Educators theme, I guess, because the objective of it is to help small tourism businesses extend their market reach into this market segment, which we call scientific tourism, which is targeted at tourists who travel to learn, basically. There are 4 country partners in the project: Greenland, Iceland, Finland, and Scotland. And the lead partner in Greenland is Greenland National Museum. And it runs until the end of 2022. Yes, okay, so I thought I'd start with some basic information about Greenland, since a lot of people don't know much about it. Maybe many of you know the story about how it got its name, Greenland, when Eric the Red sailed there and actually tried to name it kind of favorably so that his fellow Norsemen would be encouraged to go there to settle. But Greenland is only the European name for Greenland. Its original name is Kalaallit Nunaat, which means the land of the people in Greenlandic. So Greenland is located between the Arctic and Atlantic Oceans. Most of it lies above the Arctic Circle, which you can't really see on this map, but it kind of skims the top of Iceland. So if you kind of follow that round to where it would appear on Greenland, then you can see that a lot of the landmass is above the Arctic Circle. Greenland is an autonomous territory within the Kingdom of Denmark. So it used to be under colonial rule from Denmark. In 1979, Greenland was granted home rule, which meant that it gained control of some of its internal affairs. And in 2009, it was granted self-rule, which means that it got control of all of its political affairs, except for foreign affairs and defense. And Greenland does still receive an annual block grant from Denmark as well. Okay, so the entire population of Greenland is just 56,000 people. It's actually the least densely populated place on the planet. And what I think is super interesting about Greenland is that 88% of the population are indigenous Inuit. And you don't often see an indigenous population that's a majority in colonized or previously colonized nations. The rest of the population are mostly Danes, and then there's a few immigrants who've moved from other parts of the world as well. The capital city of Greenland is Nuuk, which I've put here 17,000 inhabitants in brackets, but that's wrong because Nuuk recently celebrated reaching 19,000 inhabitants, which is very exciting for Nuuk because they're really putting effort into trying to make a lot of people move to Denmark to study and then stay there. And they're putting a lot of efforts into trying to make people move back. So that was exciting. Another really exciting thing about Nuuk that happened recently is that it was named the world's first sustainable capital city. So that's a huge achievement for Nuuk and for Greenland in general as well, and for sustainable tourism. 80% of the surface of Greenland is covered in ice. So it is very icy. This is the famous Greenland ice cap, which is one of only 2 polar ice caps in the world. The other one is on Antarctica, as I'm sure you know. Yeah, and actually the landscape in Greenland is so rugged and huge that towns are not even connected by road. So if you want to move between towns, you have to fly or take a boat. And this inaccessibility is one of the things that makes Greenland a place for the most adventurous tourists. So pre-corona, our tourist arrivals on a global scale were still quite low, about 100,000 per year, which is not that big. Yeah, and talking of corona, the corona crisis brought tourism in Greenland basically to a standstill. Because being an island and with quite a limited healthcare capacity, they basically shut the borders down. So So yeah, everything kind of came to a standstill. Nowadays, fully vaccinated tourists can enter Greenland again, but it's going to take a while to build up the tourism industry to what it was before. Right, okay, let's get to the UNESCO topic. Greenland currently has 3 UNESCO World Heritage Sites. The first one to be inscribed was Ilulissat Ice Fjord, the top one on the map. This got UNESCO status in 2004. Ilulissat Ice Fjord is the channel through which ice that carves off of Ilulissat Glacier reaches the sea. Ilulissat Glacier is one of the most active and fastest moving glaciers in the world, often claimed to be the most fastest moving glacier in the world. But I don't know if anyone's sure about that. I think there's competition from Antarctica. But anyway, this glacier has been studied for over 250 years by scientists and has contributed a lot in helping us to develop our understanding of climate change. It's also said that the iceberg that sank the Titanic came from this glacier. But again, I don't think anyone knows for sure. The second UNESCO site that was inscribed is the one at the bottom, Kuyata. This one got UNESCO status in 2017. It's actually a collection of sites all around South Greenland, and all of them have significance for the Norse and Inuit farming cultures, which I will talk in more detail about soon. The third and newest UNESCO site is the one in the middle, Asavisuit Nipisat, which was inscribed in 2018. This site encompasses a huge area that stretches all the way from the ice cap to the sea, and it's been an Inuit hunting ground for at least 4,200 years. So in this talk, I'm going to be talking in detail about the 2 most recent sites, Asavisuit Nipisat and Kuyata, because they're both in much earlier stages of development, and they really complement each other in terms of the different but similar types of land use that have gone on there throughout history. But first, I want to show you a video that shortly introduces the first 2 of Greenland's UNESCO World Heritage Sites. It was actually made before Asavisuit Nipisat was inscribed, so unfortunately that one doesn't feature, but it just gives you an idea of the size and of the magnificence of the landscapes that we're dealing with in Greenland. I hope that this works well enough. The video is slow, so hopefully it looks fine. Or maybe you can't see that. Can you see that?
No, it's still the...
If you'll have to switch your share if it's opening in a new window. So you'll have to stop the current share and share the new.
Oh, okay.
That opened.
All right, doing that.
Pop-ups are always a little bit of a pain.
Yeah, I've only done this on 2 screens before, so I guess I didn't have the same problem. That works now, right?
Yes, we can see that just fine.
All right, here we go.
You may need to switch the audio from your headset to the computer microphone because we're not getting sound.
Let's try that.
Sounds good if you want to crank it up a little bit.
All right. So now I'll just talk without my headset and hopefully you can hear me fine. Okay. So yeah, I think that's a really nice video to start with to kind of demonstrate the contrasts of green landscape and icy landscape. And then the third UNESCO site, which I'll show you some images of later, is kind of another different landscape again. And yeah, it's just really easy to illustrate the beauty of the scenery with these drone shots. Actually, I was in Greenland last week with my colleagues from Visit Greenland, and we were sailing past this huge iceberg, probably the most amazing iceberg I've ever seen. It was like a perfect square, like a slab of ice, absolutely massive. And our videographer got the drone out to start filming it. And when he set it off, the drone just went straight into the water. So that's just like some of the casualties that happen when you're trying to film these landscapes. Sometimes the drone flies into the water. Anyway, a little anecdote for you there. Yeah, so that was the little intro video. Now I'm going to introduce you in a bit more detail to the South Greenland site, Share-a-thon. Now, South Greenland is the lushest and most fertile part of the country. And when I say lush and fertile, we're talking average temperatures of around 8 degrees Celsius in the summer and about -5 in the winter. But South Greenland is home to Greenland's only forest, so it is very possible to grow things here. And as a result, Greenland has been home to a strong farming culture for over 1,000 years. Yeah, so you can see the little red box at the bottom there. That's where the South Greenland site is located. And then this map is a very zoomed in map of the different sites that are part of Share-a-thon, which are the 5 main sites are drawn in red there. Yeah, and this is the area where Eric the Red and the Norsemen landed in the 10th century. It was their main settlement. They also had a settlement somewhere up near Inuit that was smaller. But they established several farms here in South Greenland. And the 5 main sites on the map here, they represent the most rich examples of their farming culture. Many of ruins of the farms still stand and they can be visited, but many of them have actually also been revived by modern Greenlanders to work as fully functioning farms. So what's really fascinating about this site is the meeting of different cultures and their connection with the same land while being central.
I'm very sorry, Liz. Sorry for the start. We don't.
Sorry?
No worries.
Everything's fine.
Yep, taken care of.
We don't see slides on the map. We see only YouTube screen.
Oh, is that true?
Yeah, at least on my screen, I see only YouTube with stopped video, UNESCO heritage sites in Greenland. We don't see slides about what you're talking.
You just
Okay,
have to reshare the other one.
Okay, I'll stop and start again. I guess I have to do that between every video.
Yeah. Now the map coming. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.
Perfect.
Sorry for disturbing, but
No worries.
I tried to follow your presentation, but was not able. Thank you.
Thanks for letting me know. Yeah, so this is the map I was talking about. Yeah, and we don't actually have a video yet which focuses specifically on this UNESCO site. But I want to show you a video of one of the fjords in the area, which is called Tsermjuk Fjord. The fjord is actually located just off the bottom of this map. So it's not technically part of the UNESCO site, but I just wanted to show you it to give you an idea of the kinds of landscapes in the area. Okay, so now I'm gonna stop sharing again so that I can share the video with you. Alrighty. Yeah, now I'm hungry watching that video. Okay, so now to talk a bit more about the other site, Asindiswindipasat. This is where it's located in the west of Greenland, where that red box is. As you can see, it lies right on the Arctic Circle, and it covers a massive area which stretches from the inland ice all the way to the sea. And this site is also recognized as a cultural landscape, but it's been historically used in a different way to the one in South Greenland. This is a more detailed map of the site, or zoomed in. It's actually the largest ice-free landscape in Greenland. And this is why throughout history, it's been a valuable hunting ground for many different groups of settlers. And it's still used as a hunting ground today. Humans have actually been hunting here for at least 4,200 years. This site has some really good video resources. So I want to show you a couple of short videos which are going to introduce the site much better than I can. The first one is like a general introduction to the site, and the second one is about hunting in the area, or how local people used to hunt in the area throughout history. I guess I'll just show you them both together. The first one is in Greenlandic. So that's pretty cool because you can hear the language. There are, of course, English subtitles. The second one is in Danish with English subtitles. So I'm going to share them with you now.
Нунарсуармиоqatigину кигорни тассаа ngortitisoqaranga касимату исумақарпоқ нунарсуа тамаккерлугу манна култууриккут нуна има пингаарутеқартигисимавоқ аллаат кигорни тассиақарфииттут аллатторсимаффининут илинеқарлуни тас имааппа нунарсуармиоqatigинут таманут пингаарутеқартуг асиуссуинипписат аллатторсимаффигму имата илангуннеқарпоқ уагут укиуни 4000 тоорнеруйуни аллаат 4500 маннануна атугарисимаарпут пиниарфиттут инуисиуллиит саққаккултуори тамаанга пеққаарамилли тасмаанииттарсимаппут таассумалу ам кингорна тоорсит култуори ам тамаанииттарсималлут уакалааллиситаагатагутуни кисиани ам уагунамманисиуаагук туули култуори маннануна атортарникууаат таманналусули такуссут ерсеққаариссоруссаа асивиссуит эққарсаатигииннарлугу такуссутиссат ерсеққаариссут сулитакуссааппут кисиани амма нунаманна тамаа асивиссуарнинаани тас имманалаанинаани сорнерсуарму ингерллаллуни амма сули такуссутиссани пеқарторуйуссу син ам тааннааннаани кисиани уллумиккут нуна атортарнера уагукалаалли укиуни 4200 тулли сули аторатсигу соорунами нутаатут массака ингерлагалуарлута кисиани нунап атортарнера сулитаанна таатассума перпутигиваа амма аллатторсимаффин илаяа
I think this is the right one.
Rensdyrjagten her på bopladsen, den foregik om efteråret, når rensdyrene i hundredvis eller tusindvis trækker fra det dybe indland og ud mod kysten. Så kommer flokkene forbi her ved Asivisuit Dasiat, og man har bygget varter af sten, sådan så at man hele tiden fra flere kilometers afstand trykker, lige så forsigtigt trykker de trækkende rensdyr ud mod bopladsen, og får rensdyrene samlet på et mindre og mindre område. Og til allersidst her i terrænet omkring selve bopladsen, der har man så skydeskjul bygget af sten, små halvmåneformede anlæg, hvor bueskytter kunne ligge og gemme sig. Og så det folk gør, når rensdyrflokken kommer trækkende, det er, at de begynder at vifte med armene og måske lave lidt lyd, sådan så rensdyrene bliver presset længere og længere frem mod bueskytterne, og til sidst så kommer rensdyrene så tæt på, så de bueskytter, der står gemt bag store sten og bag buske og bag skydeskjul, at de kan komme på skudhold af rensdyrene. Andre rensdyr vil trække forbi her, hvor vi er lige nu, og ud på en lille pynt i søen og forsøge at svømme over søen. Og der har man så haft fanger i kajakker, som kunne sejle efter rensdyrene og fange dem med lanser.
All right. I'm getting good at this. stopping sharing and starting sharing again now. Yeah, so that was just a little intro to that site. I just think it's really cool to see how the techniques that people had for hunting in such a massive area. Okay, so then I want to just talk a little bit about the two sites in combination. Although obviously one of them is a farming landscape and one of them is a hunting landscape, they're comparable in that they both demonstrate similar use of the landscape across vast amounts of time and different groups of people. So in the south, the landscape's been used to farm in two very different periods of time. The Norsemen farmed mainly cows, while today's Inuit farmers farm sheep. This is a photo from a few years ago of a local farmer in the south. So yeah, you can get locally farmed lamb in South Greenland. In Arsavisuudnipissat, which, as you saw on the video, is mainly kind of a tundra landscape with coastal landscape at one end and the inland ice at the other. So here people moved with the seasons rather than establishing firm settlements. But as I mentioned, people today are using the same hunting grounds as their ancestors used to. And the stories behind these cultural landscapes are a massive part of what gives them their outstanding universal value as UNESCO World Heritage Sites today. This is just a little cute little Arctic hare in Arsavisuudnipissat. And this is a statue of Leif Erikson, who was the son of Eric the Red, which stands overlooking the settlement of Kasviarsuk in South Greenland. Probably many of you know the mystery of the disappearance of the Norsemen in Greenland, which is also part of the kind of storytelling behind the UNESCO site there. It's quite an interesting story. Okay, then I want to talk quickly about some of the challenges that are being experienced in the development of these UNESCO World Heritage Sites. The first one is human resources. There's a lot of development work to be done and simply not enough people to do it. And when you're working with such huge and undeveloped sites, especially in the case of Arsavisuudnipissat, which is basically an mostly untouched tundra, this can be a problem, especially with the increase of tourism numbers that can occur as a result of properties receiving UNESCO World Heritage status. The second challenge is climate change, which is of course a constant and increasing challenge for Greenland in general. Greenland is getting warmer and the landscape is changing. Climate change doesn't just have an impact on the landscape, but also on how people use the landscape. So for example, we're already seeing hunting patterns changing quite drastically in the north of Greenland, where reduced amounts of sea ice in the winter mean that hunters can't get to the same areas that they used to hunt. So it will be really interesting to see how climate changes change the use of the landscapes in these two UNESCO areas. Of course, many people are optimistic that the warmer climate will allow for more things to be farmed and grown. So there will inevitably be impacts, maybe positive impacts on the farming culture, as well as the hunting culture. And then finally, challenge number 3 is tourism. Well, being inscribed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site obviously brings a lot of exposure to these areas. And with that, an increase in the number of visitors usually. In recent years, before the corona crisis, we did see an increase in tourists to these areas, especially in cruise tourists. And this brings potentially more litter, waste, manipulation of archaeological features, and erosion of places without established paths, without signs, without infrastructure. So it's really important that we try to develop these sites in sync with the amount of visitors that are coming. But again, this goes back to the human resources issue. Do we have enough staff to get the sites ready in time? And then I think this is my last slide. I just wanted to connect the talk to the CITOR Wonder Seekers project, which I mentioned in the beginning. Wonder Seekers is like the external brand of the project, and CITOR is the original name. That's why it's got two names. It's a bit confusing, I know. But yeah, there are, of course, a lot of positives to UNESCO inscription. And one of them is that it hugely raises international awareness of the sites and encourages people to visit. And in turn, this creates an urgency to protect the sites and to introduce measures like creating signage and infrastructure. In Greenland's tourism industry, we're great believers that tourism done responsibly is positive. And in many ways, these sites can actually be more vulnerable if they're not inscribed as UNESCO World Heritage, because then there isn't necessarily the obligation to protect them. So how does this link to the development of scientific tourism in Greenland? Well, one of the central ideas behind the CITOR project is that scientific tourism is the kind of tourism that is beneficial and responsible. We're still working on properly defining scientific tourism in Greenland, but we want to take departure in local indigenous knowledge and try to kind of level the playing field in terms of what constitutes scientific knowledge. So that traditional ecological knowledge, which is deep knowledge of a place, which is discovered over very long periods of time by people who've lived there and adapted to it, gains legitimacy in mainstream science. And this is where the UNESCO World Heritage Sites in Greenland can really be an opportunity, because they're so rich with traditional ecological knowledge, since they've been used by different groups of people for so long, and the knowledge of how to hunt and farm in them has been passed down through so many generations. Yes, so that was kind of it, I think. I've put some links there in case you want to read more about the Wonder Seekers project, about Greenland's UNESCO sites, or about how cultural heritage is being preserved in Greenland. The bottom one is a really nice website about that. And that's my email address in case you want to write to me, and the email address of Hans, who's the Greenland lead on the Wonder Seekers project. And I think we have still some time if anyone's got any questions. I guess I should stop sharing my screen now, right?
Well,
As I say, if you want to drop any of the links into the chat for people to grab, that's fine too.
Yeah, I'll do that now, actually.
yeah,
And
that was really something. I was fascinated by it the first time, and certainly even more now, because I don't think people know about the green side of Greenland. So that is very informative. And if there are some questions from anybody for Liz, I don't think there are. Now I have one.
I just
Oh, hello.
yeah.
Hello, Natalie.
Hello,
Hi.
Maria P. Sorry
Hi.
for disturbing you. I just wanted to say that Liz's presentation was brilliant. It's fascinating place. I remember my time in Greenland, and it's what are you doing? It's very important. So just keep going, and thank you very much for your presentation. So go ahead, Maria P. Sorry for disturbing.
I'm just very curious, also because a friend of mine from the Society of Women Geographers is actually the director of the UNESCO site. So there is a kind of connection in that way. Now, you were talking about the difficulty in making these sites more safe and more durable. Is it a problem of time, people, money? How is the sequence to make a site actually usable in a friendly and sustainable way?
Yeah, I think it's all of the above, really.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think particularly in the case of the newest one, which is so massive, it's just very hard to manage. Also because large parts of the site are not really, we don't really have a record yet of where the vulnerable areas are. It's in process, but it just takes a really long time because it's so huge. So there are teams going around making a kind of vulnerability assessment of what are the features that we like need to protect with the highest priority. Where can we not let people go? Things like that. So yeah, it's definitely time and people. Given that the site, that site in particular, is so huge. The one in the south, I think, is a bit easier to manage because it's kind of 5 smaller specific sites, and a lot of them have ruins as like their main feature. So then it's kind of very obvious that this is the thing that needs to be protected. But yeah, it's hard to know like which is the best way to do it. Do you kind of like create all of the infrastructure first and then get it inscribed, but then you're not guaranteed to get it inscribed, so you kind of need that inscription in order to make it a priority so that you can get the money to create the infrastructure for tourism. So yeah,
a kind of vicious circle there. What do you do first, in a way? I see. But independent tourism is something where, you know, these sites could be visited individually or independently by people. How do they actually get there? Because they seem to be fairly remote, and tourists are sort of arrived from one airport or by ship or something. So how does it actually work?
Yeah, you can fly to towns which are sometimes within the site or sometimes very close to it. And then basically in the south, it's a lot more accessible. There's an airport in the south, and then there's heliports as well that you can fly around and you can sail around. And some of the towns and settlements you can even hike in between. They have like kind of ATV roads that you can hike between. So that's quite accessible. You need to be a bit adventurous. You need to be willing to walk a bit, and then and a lot of the farms you can actually, they're also kind of like farm stays, so you can overnight there as well, which is pretty cool. In the as Nipper said, in the west, there's the international airport. The main international airport of Greenland is actually in that site. Exactly. So you can fly there and then you can just hike out and you're in it. But as I said, there's not that much infrastructure, so it's just a case of like kind of going wilderness camping wherever you want to go. You can go anywhere and you can camp anywhere. There's also a long distance hike called the Arctic Circle Trail, which goes from Kangerlussuaq to Sisimiut, which is a city that lies on the west coast of Greenland. That takes about 7 to 10 days. Oh, wow. That's kind of the perfect way to experience that UNESCO site, because you hike all the way from the ice cap to the sea. Wow. So you see all of the landscape in between. And there's most of the way along there, there's huts that you can stay in as well.
That sounds quite developed, because I know that you know Robert Peroni, and we had an interview with him in Matsalik or Tasiilaq, which is definitely a much more difficult place to access anyway. And I followed over the years his way of enabling the Inuit in Tasiilaq to develop their own sustainable tourism, and it's quite an achievement.
Yeah.
What about COVID situation? Did it how to call it, destroy all tourism on Greenland, or how people survive now with COVID?
It pretty much shut down all tourism, yeah, because they don't have very much healthcare capacity in Greenland. I think they only have, or at the beginning of Corona, they only had like 4 ventilators in the whole country. So they couldn't really afford for anyone to get seriously ill. So they basically shut the island down, which is very easy because it's an island and there's only 2 airlines that fly into there anyway, and one of them's owned by the government. So
no any tourism right now, even from Denmark, people will not allowed to come.
Right now you can come again if you're fully vaccinated. Actually,
but the season already over, so the summer.
Yeah, the high season is June to September. Yeah, so especially for cruise ships, like there's been no cruise tourism for 2 years, and there won't be, and they don't start until June. So by the time they start again, it will be almost 3 years without cruise ships. And many of the settlements, the only tourism they get is cruise tourism. So that's quite dramatic for them. But yeah, people are going again now, mainly from Denmark, Scandinavia.
Did people get some support from government to support tourism activity for future?
Yeah, there were some aid packages, yeah. But I guess, I mean, kind of the positive thing about a lot of tourism entrepreneurs in Greenland is that they have other jobs as well. Like they see tourism as a very seasonal job, and then they have their other
they still have some.
Yeah, so a lot of them kind of just reverted back to what they used to do or what they tend to do in the off season. But yeah, it was particularly hard hitting for those tourism entrepreneurs who had kind of got to a stage where tourism was a full-time job for them. And then suddenly they had nothing and they didn't have that kind of other career to go back to.
Thank you very much. I think that we are maybe ready to move to the next person. Liz, has been a pleasure. And also our best wishes for your PhD project, which is also very interesting because it's linked with tourism. And would you like just to say very briefly, what is your PhD project?
Yeah, it's about, well, I'm trying to encourage more sustainable tourist behavior through applying behavioral science to tourism. So I'm going to test maybe some kind of nudging strategies in destinations in Greenland to see if it has an effect on how sustainable tourists behave.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, and hope we'll be in touch. Join us with Polar Educators International. It will be a pleasure to have you among our members.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and enjoy the rest of the event.
Not many to go now, just 4. And we also thank Joanna for the marvelous job that she's done. She's about 1 a.m. for Joanna in Anchorage.
Oh, no.
So, no, isn't it?
Just midnight.
Oh, just midnight. Okay.
Oh, you're going to turn into a pumpkin.
Absolutely.